Well, hello everyone. I'm also a little nervous. I'm used to public speaking. I'm a professor, or a retired professor of stem cell biology at Griffith University, and I've spent my life giving public talks. But of course, they're all about, geeky scientific things, and to talk about something personal makes one rather nervous to get up here. I came into this understanding all about stem cells, and but a different kind of stem cell, but that's kind of irrelevant for our purposes today. And I've actually written my talk out just because I wanted to make certain points. But it's kind of strange that I should be invited to this. I know that, I don't think my story is anything more special than all of you out there. We all have our own stories. We've all been affected by myeloma. And we all share the same shock, the same grief, the anxiety, the tears, the love, the adjustment, and the big learning curve that goes with it. As a biologist, as a stem cell biologist, I quite understand the biology, and I think possibly that's helped me because I could talk to my doctor. We would swap between, science nerds talking to each other about the biology behind it, and then at other times he would be relating to me as a kind of grieving, desperate patient, as we all are at different times during our treatment. So, but I think understanding something about the biology, not really about the treatment, but about the biology, meant that all of those big words weren't a barrier to me. I think I was asked to talk today. I don't think I don't think my story is much different, other than in terms of the internal story, than anybody else, but I think they like the irony of a stem cell scientist being hit by a disease that needed a stem cell transplant. So, look, I thought I'd first tell you a little bit about my story, and then maybe that we could have a talk afterwards. Maybe there are things that are raised by what I say. Maybe there's nothing raised by what I say, but maybe there's something raised by what I say that you might like to contribute at the end. So I'm a newbie to myeloma. I've had one haircut since my transplantation. I was diagnosed 11 months ago, not yet a year. And I'd certainly be interested to hear from you people who've had further experience. I'm as shocked as anybody else I knew about peripheral neuropathy, but when I think about what Carmel was talking about today as something in my future, it frightens me as it frightens anybody. So I'm not there yet. Until a year ago, I was a very healthy and athletic and apparently young 63-year-old, not yet in the old category. A non-smoker. I ate a healthy diet. I rode my bicycle 100 to 200 kilometres a week. All my grandparents lived into their 80s. My parents lived into their 90s. And I was looking forward to, not quite yet, but I'm looking forward to an active retirement with my wife Lisa. Why shouldn't I expect that? So unbeknownst to me, myeloma was lurking in my body. And I just wanted to tell you a little bit about the story, because it seemed like I wasn't diagnosed until quite a long way down the path. In hindsight, I began getting the first symptoms about this time of year, about 2 years ago. I'd been on a long bicycle ride. I don't know if you've heard about the Great Brisbane Bike Ride, but it's when all those people populate the roads and all the drivers don't like it. But anyway, I went for this long ride, and I felt at the end of it I had a problem with my chest, the back muscles around my spine. I thought, oh, well, I'm just exercising, I'm bending over the handlebars too much. It's obviously just musculoskeletal. I just, wiggle around a bit, got somebody to massage, and off I went. And then later in that year, I went in another bike ride. This one was called the Tour de Tambourine. And at the end of that, I had a similar problem, and there was a free physio there, and that was great. The free physio kind of loosened up the muscles, and again, I felt fine after that. And then early in 2014, about a year ago, I think it was the Great Brisbane Bike Ride once again, I had the same problem, and but it seemed to be worse. My back had been getting worse. My thoracic spine seemed to be getting tighter and tighter. So I went to a local physio and got this young fella who he was kind of testing all the vertebrae and decided that actually it was the lumbar spine that seemed to be the most stuck. So he started manipulating it, and he was young and enthusiastic, and was pushing my spinal vertebrae through this way from the front. And we've heard about crumbly bones, and I've been in pain ever since, actually. And often you go to the physio, you expect a little bit of pain afterwards, but this stayed with me and has not gone away because he was busy working on my crumbly bones. Now, as luck would have it, I love my work as a research scientist, and one of the benefits is that you get invited to speak at various conferences around the world. And at this time last year, I had a string of conferences that was going to keep me occupied travelling for about 2 or 3 months. The first was a trip to Florence in Italy, and who could resist that? And then after that, there was a trip to Brazil. And on the way, going on a long trip, I added in a visit to some colleagues at the University of Santiago in Chile and the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And then I had a visit with my parents-in-law in Colorado at the end of all of this. And so I was just going into this trip with this serious pain. And between it, I came back for about 4 days in Brisbane. I went to the GP, and she gave me, I said, I'm going away for 6 or 7 weeks, and I'm in a lot of pain, and she gave me a whole kit bag full of opioids and other drugs, Panadol, etc. I'm still on them, actually. And off I went, and the symptoms got worse and worse, and I'm sitting around on planes. And in Sao Paulo, I went to this fantastic place, if you can go there, the Iguazu Falls, on the border of Brazil, Paraguay and Uruguay. They must be the biggest falls in the world. And stupidly, I'm stupid because I'm a bike rider, right? But stupidly, I went on a jet boat ride around, not thinking that there were going to be huge rapids. And every bounce I went, I could just feel it shooting through my body, and I kind of levered myself off the thing. And anyway, and then I got to Sao Paulo. Now, Sao Paulo is the worst traffic city in the world, and I was in with some young PhD students, and they wanted to show me their city, and so that meant, well, we'll go to visit here, and we'll drive there, and we'll drive here. And one day we were in the car for 8 hours going from place to place, and I left Brazil like this. And then I went to Denver, and my wife's mother, Denver is very high, a mile high, and she's on oxygen, so she likes to travel, and my wife takes her out down to lower lands for Anyway, we went on one of these trips in the car, and it was about a 4-day trip, just sitting in a car. And I joked at the time that my wife, she thought she was just taking 2 90-year-olds on this trip, but she ended up with 3 90-year-olds. And finally got home, and my wife came home afterwards. The plane ride was just horrible, and gradually the pain was getting worse and worse, and I wasn't eating. And of course, as soon as I got home, I initiate the tests to see what the hell's going on. And it was halfway through those tests when the GP said to Lisa, well, I think if he gets any worse, take him to the emergency. And so she pretty much immediately took me to the emergency at the Wesley, and they took me straight in with kidney failure and close to death. I'm afraid I'm a little bit emotional now thinking about this. That was Sunday the 14th of June last year. So it took a couple of days to stabilise me, and I've been so proud of how fit I was. I had a very low heart rate. Well, it took them a couple of days to sort out that the heart rate wasn't pathological. But by the end of the week, I had my diagnosis of myeloma and had started the radiotherapy. And then I ended up 4 rounds of Velcade and dexamethasone. The story that many of you have all gone through. I guess I'm young enough. I ended up with my stem cell therapy, and I was lucky enough that my stem cells were healthy, and I churned out a lot of them so that I could have an autologous one where I didn't have somebody else's and all the attendant problems with those complications. I feel rather fortunate in my treatment, listening to stories of other people, and what Carmel was saying today. I ended up, I didn't have mouth ulcers, I had no infections, I had no shingles, I had no peripheral neuropathy. I just had the utter crap, rubbish that is the treatment itself. And I felt like particularly the chemotherapy to ablate my blood system, to get rid of my blood system, was the worst time in my life. But during that treatment, we have pictures when I was in Colorado before I was diagnosed, standing next to my wife, and I was taller than her, and we have pictures after the treatment now where I'm shorter than her. I lost 9 centimetres and about 23 kilos, and a doctor friend of mine said, well, look on the bright side, now you've retired, you can start a second career as a jockey. I broke about 6 vertebrae and about 6 ribs, and I thought, looking a healthy 63, and 6 months ago I felt like I was about 20 years older than that. Myeloma is a great leveller. So I don't think we all have our own story. They're all slightly different, but we're united by myeloma. We all face death and must quickly make sense of our lives as we feel so close to the end. We all grieve for the loss of innocence, and again I'm thinking how innocent I am at this point in my treatment compared to some of you. Our dreams are shattered, and the gloomy and painful path that seems to be ahead of us. For me, the pain has been a feature all the way through. So I've learned a lot in the last year in the myeloma school of hard knocks and big shocks. The main lesson has been the automatic kindness of people, known and unknown. When the enormity of myeloma, pain and chemotherapy overwhelmed me, I depended on the love and friendship and compassion that flowed my way. When the microscope of imagined death is trained on you, You measure your life by the actions and support of loved ones, family, friends, workmates, and especially the nurses who comfort you in the pain and angst in the middle of the night and the day and the next night and the next day and so on. So where am I now, a year later, 11 months since diagnosis, 6 months since my stem cell transplant? So I'm reasonably healthy and not so athletic 64-year-old bloke. I'm still a non-smoking, healthy eating bike rider with good genetics for longevity. I just have myeloma still lurking somewhere that I've come to terms with the great uncertainty of this. I'm now officially retired, though I've still got some students, some PhD students to finish. I still run a lab of a couple of people because we've still got grant money to finish projects, so I'll probably be still working part-time for a few years. But like last year, I'm still a man in his early 60s with an indeterminate lifespan looking forward to an active retirement. The difference is this year I'm more ready to live each day and enjoy it more, and I think that's probably a common feeling of anybody when they've had such an experience that we treasure every day.
Before it was diagnosed.
So the question is, how long might I have had myeloma? We haven't discussed it with the doctor because it's kind of unfathomable. I just made that, I could picture those events happening where I think I saw the symptoms 2 years ago. No, it all seemed to happen in the hospital, actually. The vertebrae were breaking, and I ended up with a lot of sciatic type pain, and that took a long time. Every time I rolled over, the nerves, the bones would shift and so on. I'd roll over and break a rib or something. Yeah. So the question is, yes, why wasn't it diagnosed earlier? Yeah, I think it's because I was healthy. I wasn't feeling fatigued. I had no obvious issue that would take me, let's say, for a test for osteoporosis. When they finally tested, I had huge levels of calcium in my blood and so on. Yeah, protein levels would have been identified in my blood, but there was no reason to have a blood test. Yeah, so when I came back from the US and they were hunting around to find out what was wrong, the issue was maybe it's osteoporosis. So that was because they looked at I think an X-ray of my spine and calcium levels in the blood. They weren't yet looking at protein levels in the blood. One thing I started doing in my stupidity, I started getting into triathlons and doing the cycling leg of a triathlon, and they seem to be getting better. In fact, the Mooloolaba triathlon that I went in last year, my time was slightly worse than it was the year before, but I thought, I'm getting older, of course it's going to be. So it didn't occur to me. It wouldn't occur to anyone. I must say, cycling now, if any of you do like cycling and did like cycling and and haven't wanted to cycle because you're worried about falling off, I bought myself a tricycle, and then I actually bought it last August while I was still having therapy, and it's got electric assist. So it's been a therapy machine as well as just because I couldn't walk, but I could be out there riding 10 kilometres, with the power full on, I'm now down to I can ride without it, without the electric motor now, but I'm confident that I'm not going to fall off. So, was I diagnosed by blood or by mammogram? So, before I went into hospital and they were trying to work out what was going on, it was an issue of calcium levels, and then they saw my electrolytes, and then they looked at my urine. So I was going in for kidney failure. So I went into hospital for kidney failure, and they suspected multiple myeloma I guess, in the first day or so, and then it takes them a couple of days to send the blood away to get the test done, and there were the protein levels sky high. And so ultimately, it's I think it was the protein level which proved the diagnosis.